Test, check. All right. You had to go do a sound check down in.
Do we want to delay for a minute, or are you okay opening without him?
That's up to you.
You're the teacher. we can kick it to you whenever you want.
Let's give him a couple of minutes and then just.
How's the teacher this morning?
Doing well, doing well. Brother, sir, how you be? Doing great. Having a delay. My partner's not here. All right, we're ready now. Here you go. No worries.
I get spread too thin today.
I understand. Here, I'll welcome while you get set up.
Go ahead.
You say when. All right. Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Look, man, we've got a really great crowd here, and that was
Yeah.
kind of a surprise. And these are all the people that remembered to set their clocks forward last night. Either that or those people that don't sleep anyway. Hey, we want to say a special good morning and welcome to all of you guys who are watching live or who are going to come back and watch this online. It is a beautiful, sunshiny yet briskly chilly day here in West Monroe, Louisiana, and we're glad that you have chosen to worship and to study with us. We thank you for that very much. Billy, how's
winter has been just like doesn't want to let go.
That's right, right.
You know,
Just when you think we're in the clear.
It is a nice day, but you know, there's some stuff going on. You know, the gas price is a little higher than I care for.
Well, it happens.
You know, I don't like losing an hour of sleep. But there's one good thing. Was it yesterday? Day before.
Friday.
Friday.
Day before yesterday.
Tom's birthday. 45.
Hey.
45.
Thank you. And for the second time in my life, I can remember it snowed here on my birthday.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Growing up, I also remember having swimming pool parties on my birthday. And
there you go.
Why? Because it's March in Louisiana. I mean, that's why. You really never know what you're going to get.
Right.
Well, you know, I stumbled across something this week.
Okay.
Or at least really a thought that I got thinking about that. And Billy, you know how young preachers get to be old preachers?
How's that?
And how young teachers get to be old teachers?
Are you talking about me?
No.
Oh, okay.
They let other people talk about Joshua.
Okay.
And then they carry on and they talk about all the good stuff. I bring that up because we're going to get into some tough stuff today.
Yes.
You know, we have kept this thing as light and as fun as we possibly could, and we're going to keep on with that very well. But we really got to talk about some tough stuff today.
Yeah, you gave me a word.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to get to our word in a second.
Oh, in a second,
Before
okay.
we get to our word, I want to talk a little bit about image.
Image.
And
okay,
so,
go
so
ahead.
actually I have a couple of images to start out our going gets tough here. Does anybody recognize these wonderful people and the guys in the pictures with them?
Yeah, no kidding.
So what is this? And I do want an answer here. What is this? Oh, daddies and daughters. That's good. What else is it? Children, families with children.
Humans.
Humans.
Okay.
Proud
There you
dads.
go.
Yeah, that's definitely some proud dads. And I'll tell you what, so what this is these are images of Billy and myself and our family. And I note the word that these are images because these are not us, right?
Yeah, 'cause you're right
this
here.
thing you're looking on the screen is not me. That's
you're right here.
I'm standing over
Yeah.
here. It's not
Yeah.
my morals. It's not my ethics. It's not my thoughts, my dreams, my prayers. It's not any of the pieces of me that make me me. It is merely an image that in your mind invokes a thought of me.
Right.
Or of Billy.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
so the Bible tells us that we are made in the image of God.
Correct.
Right? And so that's the very thing. We are merely but an image of him. So no more is this image up here not me. It means that I am certainly not God, even though I am made in his image.
Right.
Right? I am still nothing like, I am merely a projection that hopefully may give you a thought of God. Like that's the
Right.
that's the level of separation that we're talking
Okay.
about. Now, I try through my life, right? I study and I learn and I learn how to act and I treat other people all in ways of trying to become a little bit more God, and maybe that gets me closer, but I'm still not God.
Right.
Right?
I'm
And
not either.
I'm still not God. And that's what brings us to our $4 word of the day.
Okay, I'm gonna give a shot at this.
All right.
Are you gonna have it up here in a second?
I can have it up here in a second. Hit us with it.
Okay. Anthropomorphism. Is
That's
that
right.
good?
Yeah, very good, very good.
Anthropomorphism. When
Anthropomorphism.
Tommy sent me this word the other day, I was like, okay, that's out of my vocabulary,
All right,
that's for sure.
for
And I had to
lovers-
look it up to see what it meant, and it was even harder to say.
All right, so for
Yeah.
lovers of big words, anthropomorphism is when we take human characteristics and we place them on something that is not human. Think Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Right, he is a dog, but he kind of communicates with everybody around him, occasionally drives the car.
Over here.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that's anthropomorphizing. That's humanizing something or making something human that is not human.
Yeah.
Now, we subconsciously and sometimes intentionally do this when we think about God. Because God is so vast and so different from anything that I am or anything that I can understand, I place on him human characteristics so that I can better understand that relationship.
And we can understand him.
And we can understand
Right.
him, just even if it's just a little bit. And so, we make him an old man with a big beard who sits up in the clouds, or sometimes he may be the warrior, or sometimes he may be. So I give him these human characteristics in the hopes that I can better understand him and therefore our relationship. But that takes us back to the thing but that's the thing, I'm not God.
Right.
And he is not me.
And
He is no more human than this rock right here.
Right.
And that
Right.
is when we go in. And so that kind of brings us up to some of the difficult stuff.
Some of the
that we're gonna
subjects in this book.
Yeah, that we're going to be dealing with today
Yeah.
are really tough. We're talking about death and conquest and war and all this kind of things. And as a human, I look at this and I'm like, I wouldn't have done that. I don't understand the need.
And you hear people say, why is God mean?
Right, why is God mean?
Why is God mean?
Why did he have to kill everybody and burn the city to the ground?
Right.
And it's like, well, here's the biggest or the best answer we can give you. He's not me. Yeah, of course I would have made that decision, but I'm not him. Right? He's
Right.
looking at it from a completely different aspect or completely different scenario than I am, and because I don't understand it, that doesn't make it not in his plan and not his right. Because you remember, God's decisions are just and right, all of them, throughout his will, no matter what has happened. It is just and it is right in the scenario that he is operating in, regardless of the fact that I understand it or don't understand
Right.
it. So that's what we're going to be looking, that's the lens we're using as we go forward into this. So one of the biggest things, and we'll come back to this again and again, to remember is the conquest of Canaan was not a conquest by the Jews to get the land. The conquest of Canaan was the plan by God to cleanse the land of Canaanites' sin.
Right.
You
It's
equate this to-
kind
go
of like
ahead.
back when Noah was on the earth, God flooded the earth to cleanse it.
That's exactly right.
And then later on, Sodom and Gomorrah had become so sinful, he destroyed them with fire.
With fire, that's right. And so what he does in this scenario is Canaan has reached the epitome of their sin, right? Their Baal worship, their Azarah worship, their sacrifice, their sexual immorality, and it has gotten to the point where they had to be dealt with. And so God had promised Noah that he wasn't going to flood the earth again.
Right.
He had rained down fire on Sodom and Gomorrah, and so what he did for Canaan was he raised up a generational army within the Israelites, and that is going to be the tool that he uses to cleanse this land of their sin. And that's the thing that we need to keep coming back to. Every time we feel a little bit uncomfortable about the war strategies or the things that are brought down on these people, and it makes us in our human selves feel uncomfortable, we go back to remember, wait a minute, we were just a tool, or these Israelites were just a tool that God was using to levy his righteous justice against the Canaanites.
Right.
All right.
So we started, where are we at? So Joshua's taken over the mantle of leadership from Moses. He's met the commander of the army of the Lord.
Yep.
They've consecrated themselves. They've crossed over. There's no turning back. And now it's time for the first battle, which is Jericho.
That's right. We are going to get to Jericho. And
Yeah.
Jericho is actually in a very strategic place. And for people like myself and Miss Barker over there, we need a map for that, right? We've got a map for that. So Jericho is located in the very southern edge of Canaan, down by close to the... here, I will step over here to my map. So close to the north shore of the Dead Sea, we've got Jericho. Now you might see that it's surrounded by a mountainous region, except for the one strait where the River Jordan flows down. Now this is a delta floodplain. We understand this because we live in a delta floodplain, right here in
So
northeast
obviously they could probably grow a
Louisiana.
lot of crops.
That's
and
it,
all
man.
that
This
along there.
is a bread basket. There are
Right.
crops, there's farmland, livestock, and everything like that. And due to its separation from all the other Canaanite cities, Jericho was built as a citadel. It is a strategic fortress. It has huge walls that come into play, but its defenses are its primary thing. Right? Jericho is away from all the other cities, and so its fortifications have been built up and built up and built up over the years so that it can stand alone. That's what gives the people safety.
Right.
That they can say, hey, look, if anything comes about, all we have to do is come into the city walls, shut the gates, and send the messages out and wait for help to arrive.
And that is what the people of Jericho put their trust in, our walls. We're going to be safe in here. We've got it all figured out. Sometimes we put our trust in things that aren't really trustworthy, you know. But, you know, the walls were shut in, and so now it's time to make a military maneuver here. Now, I'm sure Joshua's generals or captains or whatever they had back then were probably scratching their head when they heard what their plan was going to be. Because generally with a walled city, you got three options. You go over, you go under, or you go through. So either you build a bunch of siege works or ladders or the ropes with the grappling hooks and get up there and climb up over, or you dig a tunnel underneath and get in that way, or you get a battering ram and go through the doors. But that wasn't God's plan.
Yeah, these walls were not only huge, but they were also tiered. There would be two sets of them at this time. So the people inside, remember we talked about this as farmland, the people inside have grain, they have food, they have livestock, all inside the walls of the city. So they're fine. They can set up and go. And so as we start right into we're going to do a lot of reading today, guys. I apologize for that, but if you brought your Bible, we want you to kind of keep along with us as we go. If not, we will have it up on the screen, but there's a lot of it, so the font gets kind of small.
Yeah, I see that.
Even I brought my glasses today.
Yeah.
All right, so we start out in 6. And it says, now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites, and no one went out and no one came in. Well, yeah, right? Remember, these guys saw the Israelite nation cross the Jordan. They could see them. They're right there. And they're like, all right, lock it up.
Yep.
Lock it up, send the messengers to go get us some help. And then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. All right, there we go again. There's that big proverbial I. This is God reminding you, this is my battle.
Right.
I have brought this city to you. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. And it's the Ark of the Covenant. On the seventh day, march around the city 7 times with priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout, and then the wall will collapse, and the people will go up, every man straight in. Now, imagine Joshua hearing this from the Lord. I mean, Joshua is a veteran.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. This is not his first battle. He has led men into battle. He has gone through. He is, all through the wilderness and everything. And, it's got to be the point where this is one of those, really marquee decisions you got to make. It's like, this plan sounds bananas.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of his men were like, what are we doing out here? We're marching around? Are we not going to go climb over or anything like that? And I'm sure there was probably a little bit of, talk.
Yeah, a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, a little bit of an issue.
We get into that whole trust realm where, as much as this sounds, but Joshua says, okay, we're going to do it. So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it. All right, so basically he's just reiterating everything God has just told him. Skipping down to 8, when Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the covenant followed along with them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew the trumpets at the rear, and the rear guard followed the ark. At this time the trumpets were sounding, but Joshua had commanded the people, do not give a war cry, do not raise your voices, do not say a word until the day that I tell you to shout. Man, that's some commanding there.
I'm sure it was a little disturbing to the people on the walls looking around, and here's these guys marching around not saying a word. Mm-hmm. There's these horns blowing, and they're just marching around. I'm going to tell a little quick story. I didn't go to OCS, but I've been a big fan of OCS for a long time. And years ago, they played a team from Urus, I think it was. And they came to OCS Stadium. It's a playoff game. And when they walked in, they all walked in single file holding their helmets, not saying a word. And everybody in the stands were like, uh-oh. And guess what? They beat OCS pretty good. So there's something to that, I think.
That intimidation factor worked out, didn't it? Yeah. So the intimidation factor definitely does work out, because you can imagine Jericho didn't have the whole of the Canaanite army, right? They would just have a faction there. They had the defenses. They didn't need all that. So they're basically looking down the wall at an army that probably outnumbers every human being in the city. I mean, it's gigantic. This is where their faith and their defensive fortifications has really come in. Well, I bet that was something.
And maybe they thought they were just going to, hang in there and just, starve them out.
Starve them out. Wait for help.
Yeah.
On the 7th day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that the day they circled the city 7 times. On the 7th time around, when the priests sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies that we sent. But keep away from the devoted things, so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking them. It's a good one.
It's a good one to remember.
Good to remember. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble upon it. All silver and gold and articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into the treasury. When the trumpet sounded, are we still on this slide over here with 20? Yeah, right at the bottom. Okay. When the trumpet sounded, the people shouted, and at the sound of the trumpet, when all the people gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So every man charged straight in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to the Lord, destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys.
That's the part that's kind of tough to
That's the part that's kind of tough, and we can look at this in a lot of different ways. It's one thing, they followed the Lord's instructions to the T.
Right.
They did exactly what he said, and the one thing that was guaranteeing the safety of Jericho was taken away. Right. And the walls collapsed. We don't know if the gates collapsed, or if the walls collapsed, or if all the walls collapsed, or like you brought up last week.
I think Rahab's was still standing.
Yeah, maybe Rahab's house was still standing and everything else, but everyone, and remember, the city is surrounded now. Right. We've been marching an army of
40,000.
Minimum, around this city. And so everybody just got to rush right in. I imagine this battle was over pretty quickly. Right. I imagine it looked from the onslaught, or from what we would consider today, almost like a slaughter.
Yeah.
But we take back and we go back to remember that this was God's battle. This was God's battle against the sin of the Canaanites. not bloodthirsty Israelites trying to go take a bunch of land.
Right.
Joshua said to the 2 men who had spied out the land, "Go to the prostitute's house and bring her out, and all who belong to her in accordance with your oath to her." So the young men who had done the spying and went and brought out Rahab, her father, her mother, her brothers, her sisters, and all who belonged to her. They brought out her entire family and put them in a place in the camp outside of Israel. Right? So Joshua kept...
The one act of obedience.
The one act of obedience.
Saved Rahab and her family.
Rahab and her entire family. And that's going to come up again a little bit later.
Yeah.
But sure enough, Joshua held to his word. It was the very first thing he commanded. Once the kind of the dust had settled, he's like, all right, you guys go make good on your word, and you get the people that you said we were going to get. All right, you guys still with us?
Yeah.
All right. And like I said, I know it's some
this
tough
next part's
stuff
pretty good.
that we're dealing with. Yeah, please.
Verse 24. Then they burned the whole city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of the Lord's house. But Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute and her family and all who belonged to her, because she had hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. At that time, Joshua pronounced this solemn oath: "Cursed before the Lord is the one who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son, he will lay its foundations. At the cost of his youngest, he will set up its gates." So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land.
Right. So we don't deal a lot with curses, in our regular, Christian day-to-day lives, or people levying curses. But you see this, and you can't help but think, it's like, well, wait a minute. Jericho was rebuilt, right?
Yes.
Jericho was very prevalent in the time of Jesus.
Yes.
We read about it in the New Testament. Jericho is actually a very, very prominent city today.
Right.
It is there. And so looking through that, this curse was actually levied. In 1 Kings, it says, in the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab, son of Omni, became king of Israel, and he reigned over Samaria. Over the Israel 22 years. Ahab, son of Omai, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. He had not only considered it trivial to commit the sins of Jeroboam of Nebat, but he married Jezebel, daughter of Ethiobel, king of the Sidonians. He began to serve Baal and worship him. Man, we're going right back to Baal and Asherah.
Yep.
Right here in the same place where, and that brings us to the point was, I believe that is the context of what the curse was about. The curse was not about rebuilding the city of Jericho. The curse was about refortifying the city of Jericho and rebuilding the culture that was there when the Canaanites read.
Right.
And so he's saying, if anybody raises up a city this bad again in this place, a city of Baal worship, a city of Azra worship, that is what I think Joshua's curse was alluding to when he said, do not rebuild the city of Jericho. He set up an altar for Baal in the temple of Baal, and that was built in Samaria. Ahab also made an Asherah pole and did more to arouse the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than did all the kings of Israel before him. In Ahab's time, Hill of Bethel rebuilt Jericho. He laid its foundations at the cost of his firstborn son, Abiram, and he set up the gates at the cost of his youngest son, Segub, in accordance with the word of the Lord spoken by Joshua of Nun. That's right. So this actually curse came to fruition when the culture of Canaanite began to arise again in southern Canaan, or in this Jericho area, and they rebuilt the city, and the words that Joshua had spoken had really come to fruition. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. So we're 1-0. We're 1-0.
1-0.
We've
Feeling
gone
pretty
in.
good. Hey, look, and
We got our first victory.
and
we're
a
1-0.
big one, a big one at that.
Big one.
Like we went up against a foe that we shouldn't have been
That's
able
right.
to take, and
That's right.
just completely wiped them out.
Yeah, so we've gone in, we're 1-0, we're fired up. We're fired, we're excited. We've won our first victory. What's next?
Season's not over, so we got to move on down the road. So we're gonna. All right, so Billy and I have, and we would gladly take some correction from the audience of how we pronounce this next city. It's spelled AI. I believe it said IA.
And
Billy's,
I'm saying AI.
So any
Any
what we
takers?
got? Peanut gallery.
Really doesn't matter.
All right, we'll go with Miss Donna and we'll say AI.
All right, Miss Donna, all right.
All right, so we're going to move on to AI. Now, Jericho, remember we said, is right over here at the north edge of the Dead Sea. And we're going to have to traipse through the mountains to get up to the next town, to get up to Ai. So Joshua sends his spies in. He says, hey, go check it out. Hey, spying has worked pretty well for us in this game. So we want to keep on. So they traipse through the mountains, and they go over and they take a look at Ai. And what do they find there?
They say, oh, we can beat these guys. Nothing to it. We're about to go 2-0. Because these guys, they don't have much. They don't have a whole lot of men. We can handle these guys. In fact, let's just send a small detachment over there.
That's right.
You
Don't
know,
send
3,000
everybody.
guys.
3,000 guys. Let's not waste our...
traipsing all our... traipsing through the mountains.
Let's not waste our resources. Let's not tire out our army. Just send a group of guys over there. They'll handle business. 2-0. We can turn our focus on down the road. Where are we starting here? We're starting in 7?
Yeah, probably verse 3 or 4.
All right, we'll do that. We'll go all the way back to 1. So I'm in chapter 7 of Joshua
you sure you
right
want to
now.
do 1? Yeah. Yeah, you can do 1. Go ahead.
But we'll come back to that. We'll
come
start
back
with
to
2.
1. Start with 2.
So Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth-aven to the east of Bethel, and told them, go and spy out the region. So the men went up and spied out Ai. When they returned, they said, not all the people will have to go up against Ai. Send 2,000 or 3,000 men, and don't weary all the people, for only a few men are there. So about 3,000 men went up, and they were routed by the men of Ai, who killed 36 of them, and chased the Israelites from the city gate as far as the stone quarries, and struck them down on the slopes. At this, the hearts of the people melted and became like water.
Boy, it doesn't take much, does it?
Got smoked.
Got smoked, and all of a sudden, we can't do anything.
And so we'll notice, before this battle, there's a couple of things that we really haven't taken care of.
Verse 1.
Verse 1. Verse 1 says, but the Israelites acted unfaithfully in regard to the devoted things. And Achan, son of Carmi, and son of Zimri, and son of Zereth, of the tribe of Judah, took some of them, and the Lord's anger burned against Israel. So they had already made one strike by not doing what they were told to at Jericho.
And even after all the people came up and said, we will follow whatever God commands.
That's right.
Back when Moses was in charge, when Joshua, we're going to follow all the Lord's commands. And here goes Achan, the first battle, take some things for himself.
That's right.
Achan's booty, right?
The second thing, Achan's booty.
Yeah.
The second thing that they did was they did not conversate with God before this battle.
That's right.
You know, Joshua had spoken directly with God, and God gave him a step-by-step plan of how it was going to go at Jericho. Well, they didn't do this for Ai. It's like, okay, we got this. I mean, we routed Jericho so quickly and so easy. Obviously, we know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they sent their small faction over there, and they got turned away. Now, mind you, it only said they really only killed 36 out of the 3,000 that were sent. And, you know, that seems like low odds, but oh my goodness, talk about being shaken to their core. It immediately said they melted in fear.
They melted in fear.
Now, this is the third time here recently that we've seen this phrase, melted in fear.
Yeah.
Right? But it always seemed to
be the other team.
Be the other team. Right. It was the Canaanites that were melting in fear because they had seen what the Lord had done in Egypt. And they had seen what the Lord had done at the Red Sea. And they had seen where what he had done at Jordan. And it was all these people said, oh my God.
Didn't take long, did it?
Your God is the God of heaven and earth, Rahab said. And all of us are melting in fear. Yeah. And then one little hiccup.
Yep.
And man, Joshua's people want to abandon the whole thing. Why did you bring us here to die? Oh my goodness.
Well, even Joshua kind of got into a little bit of that mode.
He did.
In verse 6, it says, Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down to the ground before the ark of the Lord, remaining there till evening. The elders of Israel did the same and sprinkled dust on their heads. And Joshua said, Lord, why did you ever bring us here? If only we'd been content to stay on the other side of the Jordan.
Man, did that not sound like the grumbling right out of the Red Sea?
Yes, and this is out of Joshua's mouth. Pardon your servant, Lord. What can I say now that Israel has been routed by its enemy? Routed. The Canaanites and the other people of the country will hear about this, and they will surround us and wipe out our name from the earth. What then will you do for your own great name?
Man, talk about a total 180.
I know. One little small defeat.
One little small defeat.
Keep going. The Lord said to Joshua, stand up. What are you doing there down on your face? Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things They have stolen, they have lied, and they have put them with their own possessions. That is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They turn their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever among you is devoted to destruction.
So this has been the deal from the very get-go, right? God said, as long as you will follow me and you will depend on me and you will do what I say, it'll be fine. I'll prosper you, I'll keep you. But we see time and time again throughout the entire Old Testament of this book, places where Israel has gone back against that, right? It's what ended them up in the wilderness for 40 years. It's what got them, an entire generation, struck down. And they keep saying, yes, we're going to do it. And mind you, once you go on to Joshua, and you go through 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings, there's more of this.
Oh, yeah.
There is definitely more of this to come. It kind of
It's a recurring thing.
Yeah, and it speaks to our human condition.
Yes.
And the fact that just more proof that we are not God, that we are going to make a mistake. But luckily, especially as we get into our modern Christianity, and we have that repentance and that constant cleansing from the blood of Jesus, and thank you so much for that, or we'd be in the same boat.
Right.
We'd
And
be
Achan was in a bad way.
He was in a bad way. Achan had taken some of the devoted goods that were from the spoils of Jericho that were all supposed to be given to the Lord. Right? They were supposed to be put into the treasury and given to the Lord, and everything else destroyed.
Right.
Everything else burned out, and that was just another way of offering it up to the Lord. It was for nothing. But Achan had taken some of this.
Right.
And Achan was about to get in trouble. So this gives us a little bit of an insight into how the hierarchy of the Jewish people worked here, right? They were separated. We talked about, 802,618 people walking around. How do you keep information flowing between these people? How do you keep communication going? And part of that is because of this hierarchy that it was set up.
Right.
So the nation of Israel at this time was divided by
Tribes.
by tribes. And then in the tribes divided by clans, and the clans divided by families, right? That's like same thing as saying that I live in Ouachita Parish, Louisiana, United States. So that kind of gives us our hierarchy as how we can get through. And so God told Joshua, he says, figure out who did it. Well, first of all, let's back up a little bit. He says, your problem there wasn't your army, and your problem there wasn't your strategy. Your problem there was you have sin in your house.
Right.
You don't have yourself in the right way. That's what led to your defeat.
Right. And it's hard to do God's work when you're harboring sin in your life.
That's right.
I mean, that's what happened to the Israelites right there. It's a big story that we can use now. You have sin in your life. It's very difficult to do God's work successfully. I mean, So,
and especially if that sin is a hidden sin.
Well, and then it
just
came.
kinda eats at you.
That's right. And then they wanted to go and find out who this guy was. Who did this? So the plan for breaking it's pretty cool, actually. So Joshua says, okay, I need y'all to come out by tribes. We're gonna come out by tribes. And each tribe came out, and then they picked the tribe of Judah. Okay, the rest of y'all can go home. Well, they probably all stayed around to watch. They said, okay, now come out by clans, and each clan came out, and they picked the clan of, who was it? Zerah? No.
Zerah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Zerah. And then out of his clan, they said, okay, bring each family out. And they brought out Zimri's family. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. You're correct.
Okay, I need to probably read this. Joshua had his family come forward man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, the son of Zimri, the son of Zerah, he was chosen. It kind of reminds me of when you're a kid, a bunch of boys run around, and somehow a window gets broken.
Something always gets broken.
And somehow Dad knows who did it. Okay, Dad, he's pretty wise. He knows who did it, but he brings all the boys together and goes, okay, y'all, who broke the window? And everybody just sitting there. Oh. And he knows who did it. And he'll, hopefully, he'll say, okay, whoever did, if you'll step forward. And I was always kind of like, when my sons did, if you just tell me what happened, you'll get a whole lot less trouble. You sit there and lie about it, then you get more trouble. And this is kind of what happened with Achan. Mm-hmm. And did you ever see the movie Hook? Anybody ever seen the movie Hook?
Sure, yeah.
Whenever he comes out there on the ship, and what did he say? He said, there's a stranger amongst the loyal.
Yeah.
You. And they're all, me. And finally he picks out one, the boo box. So Achan got the boo box. But I'm sure all the people in Israel got some real sweaty palms there for a little while. until their tribe got wasn't selected or their clan was selected. Whew, oh, glad it wasn't me. Because there was probably some other ones that wanted to.
Oh yeah,
take
I'm
something.
sure there were some other folks that had some other things that they were dealing with that weren't really on the chopping block at this moment.
Yeah.
That I'm sure enough were breathing a sigh of relief when in chapter 20 Achan replied, "It's true. I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and this is what I have done. When I saw the plunder and the beautiful robe from Babylon, 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and I took them. They are hidden underground inside my tent with the silver just underneath." So yeah, look, we've all fallen into this. We all find those things that we covet. I mean, you know, I've heard it said before, you know, it's impossible to keep the law of Moses because there's one commandment you can't not break. And that's the one about coveting.
That's right.
You know, that it's just kind of built into our human nature. And so he confesses to his sin. And Joshua's men go back and they find all the stuff that was there.
Yeah. And what did they do to him?
Yeah, I was going to say, a hard pill to swallow. The justice that they brought down on him was swift and severe. They stoned Achan to death.
And not only Achan, his entire family.
As well as his livestock.
And his livestock.
All right? And so sometimes that's the only way to deal with sin in our lives. You know, if we've got to rip it out, we've got to rip it all out. And sometimes it goes a little bit deeper than we thought. That in order to justify that, in order to cleanse his house and be ready to listen to the Lord again, this is basically a reconsecration of, you know, like we talked about last week.
It was a heart problem.
It was definitely a heart
honestly,
problem.
if you go back and look at that deal about Rahab, one act of obedience saved her family. And we had somebody on
one of our Facebook watchers,
Yeah.
and we want to thank you for that. And we love that you guys are out there making
Thinking ahead.
comments
Thinking ahead.
and staying with it. And one of our Facebook watchers brought up a really, really, really great point.
And they said, yes, Rahab's one act of obedience saved her family, but one act of disobedience can ruin your family. And in Achan's case, that is correct. His act of disobedience wiped his family from, you know, existence.
That's exactly right.
So
the difference in our battle that we got here was that in Jericho, the approach to the battle was much different, right? The people consecrated themselves. They followed God's instructions. They let faith boost their confidence, and they won handily. Right? And going into the battle of Ai, it was different. They hid their sin. They went on their own accord. They questioned their ability. They allowed fear to overcome their faith, and they were defeated handily.
So we're 1-1.
So we're 1-1.
Yep.
We got a little.
I think the family was aware of.
You know, and I'm glad you brought that up because Billy and I discussed that very thing. If you ever been camping, you ever lived in a tent with somebody for a little while? Mm-hmm. There's not a whole lot of secrets in the tent, is there? So I would imagine at that point that some of the people within Achan's family knew about what they were. That's a lot of gold, silver, and robes to dig a hole and bury without being seen by somebody.
That's right. That's right.
You know, I could be way off base there. That's my own personal opinion, but that's where we're going to go with.
We got to start rolling here.
Oh, we got to start rolling,
Yeah.
don't we?
Yeah, we got.
Oh, yeah. All
We don't
right.
have a
All
lot of
right.
time.
All right. In chapter 8, good old RopeaDope.
Yep.
You might remember what the RopeaDope was, right? Ali Foreman, 1974, Rumble in the
Hidden
Jungle.
ball trick on baseball.
A hidden ball trick on baseball. There you go.
Or some kind of
the halfback
pass. We're going to run the trick play now.
We're going to run the trick play. So the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged." And then
Again?
again.
There we go.
Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. And my translation has it, doesn't have it, but I'm sure there's one out there that follows that up with, and don't be an idiot. Take the whole army and go up there. That's why you have the whole army. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack Ai. For I have delivered into your hands of Ai its people, its city, and its land, and you shall do to Ai and its king what you did to Jericho and its king. Except, and this is why God always throws those curveballs, man, except that you may carry off their plunder and livestock for yourselves.
Sometimes you just got to wait.
Set an ambush for the city, right? So we had seen the playbook, all right? We had already gotten kind of a notion of how these guys at Ai fight.
Yeah.
So Joshua said, all right, I'm going to take about 30,000 of my best fighting men. I said, I want y'all to lay. Now remember, we're in a really, 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 really mountainous region, right? He says, so we're going to take some of these guys and we're going to put them over here, right? Then we're going to march up and we're going to coax them out to fight, right? And once they've all left their city, then we'll send our warriors in there, right? It'll be easy peasy. Got it. And we know this works, and we know it's going to work because who did they listen to in this battle? They listened to God. Yeah, and say, look, if you'd have come, I'd have told you the plan already, and we could have skipped that whole first part. Well, except for the Achan bit.
Right.
I'm going to jump down to 9. So then Joshua sent them off, and they went to the place to ambush and lay in wait between Bethel and Ai, to the west of Ai. But Joshua spent the night with the people. Early the next morning, he mustered his men and the leaders of Israel and marched them before to Ai. The entire force that was with him marched up and approached the city and arrived in front of it. They set up camp north of Ai with the valley between them and the city, and Joshua had taken about 5,000 men and set them in an ambush between Bethel and Ai to the west of the city. And they had soldiers take up their positions, and all those in the camp to the north in the city wait for the ambush to the west of it. And that night Joshua went into the valley. So the king of Ai sees this, and he takes all his men. He's like, oh, there they are. They're right over there. They're trying this again. They're coming from a little bit different angle. So everybody get ready.
Let's get them.
We're not going to wait for them to get here. We're going to run out
We beat them
there
once,
and
we can
get
beat them again.
That's right.
And what's interesting to me is Joshua was with the small group who was luring them out. I mean, he was probably, that was probably more dangerous position than the guys who rushed into the city.
Yes, I would imagine.
Okay. So they rushed out, and once they started chasing them, Joshua and his men turned to run. You can follow this along here, but we're going to have to speed this up just for time. And then the rest of the army, though, how many thousand? 30,000, rushed into the city and set it on fire. So then you're running out there to battle, and all of a sudden you turn around and look and say, hey, where's that smoke coming from?
That's right. And the people of Ai saw that smoke too, and they're like, oh my gosh, now we got to run back home. And now the entire army can pursue them. So in true godly fashion, in some of the battles, there was something going. Joshua had something specific he was supposed to do, right?
What's that?
He was to hold his javelin.
Oh, the javelin.
And pointed, hey, did you get a javelin for me? You were at the track meet the other day.
Well, I was at the track meet Friday, but I wasn't able to get one. They weren't ready to turn one loose. But I got something else.
Yeah, those things are not cheap.
Pretty close.
Hey, all right. Anybody here know what this is?
It's a frog gig. Not a very good one, really. And, you use it to catch frogs. When I was young, we used to go out frog gigging. Now, honestly, I don't remember ever sticking a frog with one. We usually just caught them with our hands. Now, we'd use that to stick snakes and gar and things like that. Okay. Now, we've got a true frog catching champion in here somewhere. Where's he at? Did I see him? Mike Williams? There he is, right back there. Mike Williams can catch some frogs now. And I got to tell a story real quick. Back years ago, we were doing a vacation Bible school for some kids, and we were doing the 10 plagues. And I said, I need some frogs. So I go to Mike Williams and say, hey, I need some frogs. He comes up with a whole ice chest full of bullfrogs, all sizes. And he's got them on ice, okay? So what our plan was...
Frogs on ice.
Yeah, our plan was, when it was time, we were going to throw these frogs out on the floor, and the kids were going to see, this is, what the people of Egypt had to deal with. Well, when you put frogs on ice, they just kind of go into a little state of, and so you throw them out there, and they look like they're just like, and I'm like, okay, that didn't work. So Mike said, look, just don't leave them on ice, just leave them in the ice chest. And so the next night we did the same thing, and boy, when we threw those frogs out there, it was on. It was on. So anyway, this is not a javelin, but a javelin was a weapon they used back then, that kind of like a spear, and I guess you could get a little bit farther back and take your shots at them. But sure. Go ahead and.
All right, so God had told Joshua, he's like,
2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right, he says, point your spear towards Ai, right?
Yep.
And as long as you kept this spear pointed towards Ai, our guys will come down in victory. Now, we've seen this happen before, right? We saw this with Moses against the Amalekites, right? And we say that. And so this is once again showing that this is God's plan for what's going to go on. He's like, you listen to me. This is my battle, not yours. Mm-hmm. You are simply the tool that I am using to cleanse this area of their sin. And we've got, so Ai was routed. And again, and we'll skip forward a little bit, again, the city was completely burned. And it says that all the people, now we can take this to be hyperbolic language, maybe not all the people were killed, maybe it was justified, and maybe it was just the people that were there that day. We don't really know all that, but we know that all the goods this time were given to the Israelite people. Were given
all
to
the
devoted.
livestock, all the gold, silver, they got to keep it.
And so there'll be one thing we'll bring up real quick. They took the king of Ai, and like I said, this is tough to hear. They took the king of Ai, and Joshua had him put up on a pike in front of the city gates. Just skewered him and just stuck him up there for everybody to see. And then when sundown came, he pulled him off the pike, and they threw him down right at the city gates, and they covered him with stones.
Right.
He goes on to say, keep losing my glasses.
Oh, it was something you need to remember.
That's right.
And
Joshua
you were going
burned
to talk about
Ai.
leadership too.
Yeah, that's right. Joshua burned the Ai into a permanent heap of ruins, a desolate place to this day. He hung the king of Ai on a tree and left him there until evening. And at sunset, he ordered them to take his body from the tree and throw it down at the entrance of the city gate. And they raised a large pile of rocks over it, which remains to this day. That was a reminder. That was a reminder that leadership matters. For anybody else that came across that place, it's like, what is that? What is that pile of rocks? That is the king of Ai. That is what happens when you follow someone that is not following God.
That's right.
Right? Again, this is God's conquest, not the people of Israel. So to close out after this, they go back and they renew their covenant. Right? They consecrate themselves again. They figure it out. Oh my gosh, that's right. We've got to listen to what God is saying. He is going to be the one that is going to deliver this land because it is He who is taking this land. Right? Not us. So they renew their covenants, and something that's really great is Joshua gathers all the people. He knows the importance of this. He gathers all the people, men, women, children, young, old, and foreigners, even the aliens that have grafted themselves into the Israeli people by this point, and he sets them up at these two mountains here, and he speaks to them the entire word of the law of Moses.
Reads the law of Moses.
He writes it down on the stones. He wants every man, woman, and child that is with him to know that this is the law that was given to us, and that this is going to be the thing that is going to lead our nation for the rest of its days.
Well, we had to really wrap that up, didn't we?
We did, yeah. Sorry about the speed on the end. I tell you what, Billy, if you want to pray us out real quick, we'll get down there.
That's right. Dear Lord, just want to thank you again for this time we have this morning, and just thank you that you are not us. We're made in your image, but we thank you that you have a plan for us, just like you had a plan for Joshua. Just help us to remember that. Help us to not harbor sin in our lives so we can do your work and be successful. Thank you so much for Jesus, the